In 1971, a group of ordinary college students walked into the basement of Stanford University. Some of them were given uniforms. Some were given numbers. Some were handed power. Some had every bit of power taken away. And within 6 days, the experiment had to be shut down. Not because someone died, not because the building caught fire, because the people inside started becoming something the researchers claimed they never expected. This is the story of the Stanford Prison Experiment. And I promise you, the version you heard in psychology class probably left out the most uncomfortable part. Because the scariest question is not what happens when ordinary people are given power. The scariest question is what happens when ordinary people are told what kind of monsters they're supposed to become. Let's go back to August 1971. Stanford University is one of the most respected schools in the world. Palm trees, brilliant students, beautiful campus. The kind of place parents brag about at dinner parties with the exact level of smugness you're picturing. But underneath the psychology department, in a basement hallway, researchers were building something very different. A prison. Not a real prison, obviously. There were no murderers, no armed guards, no razor wire, no decades of institutional corruption baked into the walls. Just a hallway, some converted rooms, a few locked doors, a closet turned into solitary confinement, and a group of young men who had answered a newspaper ad for a paid psychology study. The ad was simple enough. Male college students wanted for a psychological study of prison life, $15 a day, which in 1971 was decent money. Not sell your soul to science money, but definitely I can buy groceries and pretend I'm responsible money. More than 70 people applied. The researchers screened them. They wanted normal students, healthy students, emotionally stable students, people without criminal backgrounds or major psychological problems. Basically, they were trying to remove the obvious red flags. No one picked a good guy group and a bad guy group. Instead, the students were randomly divided. Half would become prisoners, half would become guards. And that's where the story gets uncomfortable. Because in theory, the difference between a prisoner and a guard was random chance. A coin toss. One guy got sunglasses and authority. Another got a number and a cell. That's it. The man running the experiment was psychologist Philip Zimbardo. Zimbardo wanted to study how people behave when placed into roles of power and powerlessness. Do cruel systems attract cruel people? Or do cruel systems create cruel behavior? Can a uniform change you? Can a title change you? Can a fake prison become real if everyone inside agrees to act like it is? Those were the questions. And to answer them, Zimbardo and his team turned the Stanford basement into one of the most infamous experiments in modern psychology. Now, before we get into what happened, you need to understand the setup, because the setup is the whole thing. The prisoners did not simply arrive at the lab and sign in at a front desk next to a bowl of mints. They were arrested. Actual local police helped stage it. The students assigned to be prisoners were picked up at their homes. They were searched, handcuffed, put into police cars, taken away in front of neighbors who may have had absolutely no idea this was part of a study, which is insane. Imagine you're drinking coffee on your porch and the kid next door gets dragged away by police, and 3 days later someone tells you, "Don't worry, it was for psychology." That is not comforting. That is a lawsuit wearing sunglasses. When the prisoners arrived at the mock prison, they were processed. Their clothes were taken. They were given loose smocks. They were assigned numbers. They had chains placed around one ankle. They were no longer called by name. They became prisoner 8612, prisoner 8910, prisoner 416. And if that sounds small, it isn't. Names matter. A name says, I am a person. A number says, I am something being managed. The guards, on the other hand, got uniforms. They got whistles. They got wooden batons. And most famously, they got mirrored sunglasses. The sunglasses were not random. They hid the eyes. No eye contact. No human connection. Just a reflective wall staring back at you. Which is, apparently, all it takes to make a college student look like he's managing a tiny dictatorship in a hallway. The guards were told they could not physically harm the prisoners, but they were also told they were responsible for maintaining order. And that little gap right there between do not physically hurt them and keep control is where the whole nightmare started growing teeth. The first day was almost awkward because everyone knew this was fake. The guards knew they were students. The prisoners knew they were students. The researchers knew the prison was basically a theater set with a research grant. But human beings are strange. Give us a costume, a role, a set of expectations, and we start improvising our way into something dangerous. At first, the guards tried to act like guards. Counts, commands, rules. The prisoners were made to line up and recite their numbers. They were woken up. They were ordered around. Nothing catastrophic at first. Just a bunch of college students pretending to be inside a prison. Then the prisoners rebelled. They barricaded themselves inside their cells. They ripped off their numbers. They refused to obey. And suddenly, the guards had a decision to make. They could treat this like students refusing to play along, or they could treat it like inmates challenging their authority. They chose option 2, which, historically speaking, is where things tend to become terrible. The guards used fire extinguishers to force the prisoners away from the doors. They stripped prisoners of clothing. They removed beds. They created privileged cells. Some prisoners got better treatment. Others got punished. They used division, humiliation, sleep disruption, public embarrassment, group punishment. The kind of tactics that don't leave bruises but still get inside your head and start rearranging furniture. And remember, this was not a real prison. Nobody in those cells had been convicted of anything. Nobody was serving a sentence. Nobody was dangerous. They were college students in a basement, but the role was starting to feel real. And once the role feels real, people stop asking, should I be doing this? They start asking, what? Am I doing this role correctly? That is a very different question. And it can be a very dangerous one. One of the prisoners, known as 8612, began to break down. He became emotionally distressed. He cried. He wanted to leave. And here's where the experiment gets even darker. Because when a participant is clearly distressed in a study, the normal response should be, okay, stop. This person needs out. But inside the Stanford Prison Experiment, even distress became part of the prison world. The researchers were not observing from some clean, neutral distance. They were inside the story. Zimbardo himself took on the role of prison superintendent. Let me say that again. The psychologist running the experiment also became the superintendent of the fake prison, which is a little like studying a house fire while actively holding a gasoline can and saying interesting flame behavior. Once Zimbardo became the superintendent, he was no longer just asking what is happening here. He was also asking, how do I keep this prison under control? That is a massive problem, because the person responsible for protecting the participants had become part of the system that was harming them. The fake prison now had a hierarchy. Prisoners at the bottom, guards above them, researchers above the guards, and Zimbardo at the top, not just as scientist, but as the man running the prison. Which means the experiment was not just studying authority. It was creating authority, then participating in it, then acting surprised when authority started doing what authority does, when nobody is watching it closely. The prisoners kept deteriorating. Some became passive. Some became anxious. Some tried to resist. Some seemed to internalize the situation. At one point, a prisoner reportedly started acting as if he could not leave unless the prison allowed it, even though, technically, this was still a study. That's the part people struggle to understand. Why didn't they just leave? And sure, from the outside, that seems obvious. Just walk out, just say no, just refuse. But systems of control rarely depend on physical locks alone. They depend on confusion, pressure, uncertainty, authority, language. A room full of people acting like the situation is normal. When everyone around you behaves like the prison is real, your brain starts negotiating with the lie. The guards became more creative. Not all of them. And this is important. The experiment is often told like every guard instantly transformed into a sadist. That is not true. Some were harsh. Some were passive. Some seemed uncomfortable. Some went along with it. And honestly, that might be more realistic, because real abuse inside systems usually doesn't require everyone to be a monster. It only requires a few people to push, a few people to enjoy the power, a few people to look away, and everyone else to tell themselves, well, I'm not the one making it worse. That's how systems get away with things. Not with a room full of villains laughing dramatically into thunder. With paperwork. With routines. With people shrugging and saying that's just how it is. The Stanford prison started developing its own little culture, its own rules, its own rituals, its own logic. The guards held counts. The prisoners obeyed. Privileges were given and taken away. Punishments were invented. The prisoners' identities kept shrinking down to numbers, and the guards' identities kept expanding into authority. It was only day 2, day 3, day 4, not years, not months, days. The study had been planned to last 2 weeks. It didn't make it halfway. Now, one of the most important people in this entire story was not a guard, not a prisoner, and not one of the original researchers. Her name was Christina Maslach. She was a graduate student at the time. Later, she would become a respected psychologist. But in that moment, she was basically the person who walked into the basement and said what everyone else should have said earlier. What are you doing? Maslach saw the prisoners being mistreated and was horrified. She confronted Zimbardo, and that confrontation mattered, because by that point, the people inside the experiment had adapted to it. The guards had adapted. The prisoners had adapted. The researchers had adapted. The whole basement had built a little reality around itself. And once you're inside a reality long enough, even a terrible one, it starts to feel normal. Maslach had not adapted. She walked in from the outside and saw it clearly. Not as an interesting study, not as valuable data, not as a powerful demonstration of social roles. She saw young men being harmed. And she said no. That is what finally helped stop it. The experiment ended after 6 days. 6 days. That's how long it took for a fake prison in a university basement to become psychologically dangerous enough that someone from the outside had to force the question, has everyone lost their minds? For decades, the Stanford Prison Experiment became one of the most famous studies in psychology. It was taught in classrooms, repeated in documentaries, mentioned in books, used as proof that ordinary people can become cruel when placed in positions of power. And to be fair, that lesson is not useless. Power can absolutely change people. Roles can shape behavior. Institutions can normalize cruelty. A uniform can make someone feel anonymous. A number can make someone else feel less human. But here's the thing. The popular version of the Stanford Prison Experiment is too clean, and history is allergic to clean stories. The version most people learned goes like this. Random students were assigned to be guards and prisoners. The guards became cruel. The prisoners broke down. Therefore, ordinary people naturally become abusive when given power. Simple, terrifying, perfect for a textbook sidebar. Unfortunately, reality is messier, and the messier version may actually be more disturbing. In the years since the experiment, critics have taken a much harder look at what really happened, and they found problems, big ones. First, the participants may have been responding to what they thought the researchers wanted. This is called demand characteristics, which is a very boring academic term for something extremely important. It means people in a study sometimes figure out what behavior is expected of them and then perform it. So if you recruit people for a prison experiment, dress half of them like guards, give them symbols of authority, tell them they are responsible for control, place them inside a dramatic prison simulation, and surround them with researchers watching for dramatic behavior. Some of them might not be revealing their true inner darkness. They might be playing the part, which does not make the behavior harmless, but it does change what the experiment proves. Second, critics have argued that the guards may have been encouraged, directly or indirectly, to be tougher than the classic story admits. That matters, because there is a huge difference between power naturally turned them cruel and authority figures gave them a role, signaled what behavior was expected, and then watched as they performed it. The second version is not less scary. Honestly, it might be worse, because it means people don't always become cruel by accident. Sometimes they become cruel because someone above them builds a stage, hands them a costume, points at the victims and says, "This is the job." Third, Zimbardo's dual role as researcher and prison superintendent seriously compromised the whole thing. He was studying the system while running the system. That is not neutral observation. That is directing the play while reviewing the performance. And yet for years the experiment was treated like a window into the soul of humanity. Maybe it was, but it was also a window into bad research design, ethical failure, confirmation bias, and the enormous power of a good story to outrun the facts. Because people love a simple nightmare. They love being told, "This proves anyone can become evil." It's dramatic, it's memorable, it makes for a clean moral. But the truth is more useful. The Stanford Prison Experiment does not prove that everyone is secretly a monster, waiting for the right sunglasses. It suggests something more specific. People can be pushed into cruelty when a system gives them permission, when authority approves it, when language dehumanizes the target, when oversight disappears, when everyone else goes along, when the person in charge wants the experiment to keep producing dramatic results. That's not a monster story, that's a system story, and system stories are harder to dismiss. Because you can't just say, "Well, I'm not a bad person." Most people inside harmful systems don't think they're bad people, they think they're doing their job, following instructions, maintaining order, playing their part, being realistic, being professional, keeping control. That is the horror of it. The cruelty does not have to feel like cruelty while it is happening. It can feel like procedure. It can feel like discipline. It can feel like the rules. And once cruelty becomes a rule, people stop seeing it as a choice. That's why the Stanford Prison Experiment still matters. Not because it was perfect science. It wasn't. Not because every conclusion people drew from it was correct. They weren't. It matters because even with all its flaws, it shows how quickly a constructed reality can become dangerous. A hallway became a prison. Students became guards. Students became prisoners. A professor became a superintendent. A study became a system, and the system started protecting itself. That is the part that gets under my skin, because no one needed a real prison. They only needed symbols, uniforms, numbers, chains, rules, titles, a door that looked like it should stay closed, and people willing to act like all of it meant something. Human beings are very good at creating meaning. Unfortunately, we are also very good at creating cages out of meaning. Call someone by a number long enough, and other people may stop hearing their name. Put someone behind bars long enough, and people may stop asking whether they belong there. Give someone authority long enough, and they may start confusing obedience with morality. And that is where things get dangerous. The Stanford Prison Experiment is often described as a study about evil, but I don't think that's exactly right. It's a study about permission. Permission to dominate. Permission to humiliate. Permission to look away. Permission to let a role do things your ordinary self might have questioned. And that is much scarier than the idea of evil, because evil sounds rare. Permission is everywhere. It shows up in workplaces, in schools, in institutions, in families, in governments, in prisons, in any room where one group has power and another group is told to be quiet. The basement at Stanford did not create something new. It compressed something old. It took the ingredients of institutional abuse and shrank them down into a hallway. Power, anonymity, dehumanization, weak oversight, a story that justified the harm. And once those ingredients mixed, the whole thing started cooking fast. Too fast. 6 days fast. So what actually happened in that basement? Did ordinary people become cruel because power corrupted them? Maybe partly. Did the researchers influence the behavior they claimed to be observing? Almost certainly. Did the experiment prove something universal about human nature? Not as cleanly as people were told. But did it reveal something deeply uncomfortable about authority, performance, and the human need to belong to the system around us? Yes, absolutely. And that may be the real lesson. Not that everyone is secretly evil. Not that every person with power will become abusive, but that people are more vulnerable to roles than they want to admit. We like to think we will be the one who refused, the guard who said no, the prisoner who walked out, the researcher who stopped it sooner, the bystander who recognized the danger immediately. And maybe we would. I hope we would. But history is full of people who thought that about themselves right up until the moment the room changed around them. That is why stories like this matter. Not because they let us point at the past and feel superior, but because they force us to ask what we would do if the costume fit, if the rules rewarded us, if the system approved, if everyone else acted like it was normal. Because the Stanford Prison Experiment did not last 2 weeks. It lasted 6 days, and that was enough. Enough for students to break down, enough for guards to humiliate them, enough for researchers to get pulled into their own creation, enough for one outsider to walk in and say, "Stop, look at what this has become." And maybe that's the part worth remembering most. Sometimes, the most important person in a dark room is not the one with the title, not the one with the clipboard, not the one giving orders. It's the one who still has enough distance to say, "No, this is wrong." The Stanford Prison Experiment became famous because it seemed to reveal the darkness inside ordinary people. But the deeper truth is more disturbing. It revealed how easy it is to build a world where darkness feels official, where cruelty wears a uniform, where humiliation becomes policy, where a person becomes a number, and where everyone waits just a little too long for someone else to stop it. If you made it to the end of this one, genuinely respect. This is not an easy story. Not because it's bloody, not because it's supernatural, but because it's familiar in a way people don't like admitting. This channel is about the corners of history people sanitize, simplify, or quietly push into the basement. And sometimes the basement is literal. Next time, we're going even deeper into the experiments that crossed the line between science and suffering. If you want the real story, subscribe. And if this one made you think about power differently, drop a comment and tell me what part hit hardest. I read every single one. I'll see you in the dark.